Some Locked On crossover action to talk about one of the more interesting players in this draft, Jeremy Sochan from Baylor, one of the better defenders in this draft with some question marks about his offense. We'll break it all down and put it in Indiana Pacers context today on the Locked On Pacers and Locked On Baylor podcasts.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, welcome in to another edition of either Locked On Pacers or Locked On Baylor, wherever you're descending upon the Locked On Podcast Network today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tony East, the host of Locked On Pacers. He's Drake Toll, the host of Locked On Baylor. And today we're talking about NBA draft prospect Jeremy Sochan, lottery projected guy. Already was supposed to work out for the Pacers, but had flight issues. He will be back in Indiana. We're going to break the game down and talk about him from a Pacers perspective because the Pacers have their highest pick in the draft since 1989. It's very important that they know these prospects like at the back of their head, and Sochan's no different. If they move down, if they trade into another lottery spot, maybe they love him and want to pick him at 6. It's important to know these guys. We'll get right into Sochan's game. And Drake, you covered Baylor basketball this season as a freshman. How much did he jump out to you and step right into a team that was coming off of a darling 2021 season?
Yeah, Tony, first and foremost, thanks for the offer to join. I always love talking about Sochan or Sochan. You talk about offensive question marks. How about pronunciation question marks? We'd ask him every other day, like, hey, what is it today? And one day it's Sochan, one day it's Sochan. So Jeremy Sochan, as I have this, I'll bounce back and forth, really jumped off the page in that when he came to Baylor, he told a bunch of us beat writers, I'm going to be here for 2 or 3 years. He's coming from kind of Oklahoma, but also kind of England, but also kind of Poland, just kind of a world traveler guy. Instead, he wanted to stay at Baylor, get a college education. And then when you find out you're a possible top 10, top 15 pick in the NBA draft, you really can't turn that down. I'm not sure if he was ready for that coming into BU or if he knew that even his progression or his ceiling was that high, but he landed right there, especially after that North Carolina game late in the season where a lot of people point to that he put his name on the map. And I fell in love with him as a guy, as a player too, pretty early on. And he showed he was going to be a really consistent and just vital piece to Baylor's team coming off that national championship year where you're trying to reload, not rebuild.
Yeah, he jumped off the page to me just as that juicer defender kind of guy. It's so fascinating that he came off the bench because he's always in key moments for them because of that defense. Like no matter who had the ball, he's right up in their face. He's strong. His feet move quickly, whoever's on him. And so, you point out like the Kansas game was the first game I watched for him. I think it was the home Kansas game. He had 17 that game. And then the North Carolina game we talked about, he had a nice scoring night. The third game I watched was Alabama. I think he had 20-something in that game, right? So my first impression, I'm like, hey, this guy's a good offensive player. 9 points per game guy, right? Like he's not that solid or he's not known for his offense, but his defense is so rock solid all the time. He's always in front of his man, jostling for position, good in the post, good steals guy. The advanced stats that a lot of scouts love to kind of project defense, he's good in that area as well. I think that is where he kind of cemented himself as a lottery prospect throughout this college season is with his defensive play on that end of the floor.
100%. And that was down the stretch in the North Carolina game we mentioned. That's where it felt like he made his bed nationally, right? Everybody's kind of watching that game. Baylor's down 25. They come back. Who's this Dennis Rodman-esque looking guy who has the Draymond Green moxie, who's on the ground and getting guys thrown out of the game? I mean, thanks to him, across the way, you had a Brady Manick get tossed from the ball game. And so he's kind of Baylor's savior in that sense. And in that, you see this hard-nosed, tough guy. You look at his offensive stats, and you mentioned 17 in that game against Kansas at home, but that was kind of an outlier on the Jeremy Sochan stat book this season. Not a pure scorer, not a guy who's going to take the basketball, can run the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and find a way to score from those positions. Instead, he's really that true 4 where you're going to get the ball down to him in the post. He's got the hook shot there. You try to get him to the line, get him to every now and then he'll take a 3-pointer, and every now and then he'll make it. But really, he's not that guy. Instead, he's a defensive specialist without a doubt. I don't think he's as drastic as like a Tony Allen per se, right? He's not just like, okay, please never touch the basketball ever while you're on the floor. No, but at the same time, he makes his bet on the defensive side of the ball. And even on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to hustle stats and hustle plays, offensive boards, putbacks. When you look at his point totals, that's where most of them come from, inside the paint, from offensive rebounds where he's scoring and putting it right back up. He's got that kind of game where he just plays hard-nosed basketball. It's not this crisp, smooth, pull-up jumper. Instead, he's going to get, nose of the grindstone and pull up those tough stats where you're not seeing the other NBA prima donna point guard, shooting guard guys going after.
I like that a lot of his offensive rebounds too are off of his own plays. Either like he would miss and get it himself, or he would create the shot by attacking and get it himself. Like that has a lot of value to possession. The fact that he's so ready for plays like that, it's hard to have that second jump and he's got it. And those hustle plays really stand out when you watch him. And I agree with you. He's not the Tony Allen, the whatever high level defensive prospect you want, where he is so in your face and annoying all the time to the point that you're not even giving the superstar the ball. But he's pretty dang good on that end of the floor. But what stood out to me beyond what we've talked about already defensively too is like situationally it didn't matter. He could be effective because his footwork's so good and because he's strong and he's 6'9". Like in the Kansas game we've already brought up 3 times now, which we'll stop doing. But he would guard the perimeter and then the possession would kind of change and he would switch under the basket and then he'd be guarding a post up. And then he'd go back to guarding his guy on the perimeter and then a post up. And like the being able to be interchangeable in that way, we'll talk about his NBA fit later, but that's going to be really big in projecting his skills in the pro levels that he's able to do that. So I like a lot of the stuff he's able to do on defense. On offense, the strength to me, the biggest strength to me is that, the hustle plays on the offensive glass because he's not much of a creator. We'll talk about his offensive game more later, but the offensive glass is a really big one. His finishing at the basket was pretty good. CBB Analytics had his at the rim number at 69.5% and in the paint at 56.1, which is great. So once he gets around the rim, he's really solid, but the offensive game's not super polished, but just in general is able to find crevices to be good enough on that end of the floor.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Tony. 29% from 3. Is that good in the NBA?
No, it is not.
I can tell you it's also not good in college, and that's where Jeremy Sochan was, where he was this year. So if you're looking for a sharpshooter guy who's also at 6'9", you're probably not looking for Jeremy Sochan.
Here's the thing. I'll let you keep going in a second, but if he shot 36% from 3, he'd be like a top 6 pick, top 7 pick. So.
Exactly. And that's a facet of the game that I've been asked before. Do you feel like Jeremy Sochan is just picking up that shot away, or, at one good offseason where he pulls a Dirk and he just gets in the gym and he's working on the 3 ball. And I still don't think that's Jeremy Sochan's game or the way that he liked to play basketball. Go back to his high school stats and the way you saw him play overseas and then when he came to the United States. Jeez. And you're just not going to see a prototypical scoring guy. That's not his game, and he's okay with that. But there are a lot of players in the NBA who have that kind of same look. And I've seen him compared to a guy like Kyle Kuzma, which I don't necessarily see that myself. I don't know why it's people's first comparisons to Jeremy Sochan. I think it's almost an insult to our friend Jeremy Sochan. But at his stature, if he could land the shot, he would be, like you said, a top 5 pick. But I don't think that's in the cards for Sochan, and that's still okay because the other stuff he brings to the table on the defensive side of the basketball, and even still offensively, his assist numbers are fine. He's a really solid passer, and he sees the floor so well. He just doesn't turn the ball over that often. A smart basketball player, period.
If I had to make an NBA comp, mine would be like Thaddeus Young, for example. Like one of those good defenders, decent floor games, but on offense, if he doesn't touch the ball, he's fine with that. And that's a totally fine way for your team to operate. And Thad has built an entire lengthy career of having a positive impact on every single team he's been on because of that role. And he even for the Pacers had some nice seasons. So, he grew on offense quite a bit. He had an above average 3-point shooting percentage here in Indiana. But that's kind of where I see Sochan growing. I hate that we're saying his last name different. I will change to Sochan for the rest of the show. So I don't even care about the 3 ball for him because I don't think in the NBA level he'll be a guy who has the ball enough that it matters. Like his usage at Baylor was not very high. He was like the 4th option a lot of the time when he was in there. And even then when he would catch, he would attack. And his drives are a little weird because his acceleration is not super fast, but he's still quick in full speed. Yeah. So like he could make plays happen. You mentioned the passing. Like he's a good passer and can see the game well. But because he can see the game well, he knows like, hey, I shouldn't do this. Someone else should do this. Right. So it's a weird balance of like, it's good that he knows that he should be the 4th option, but also like in terms of a draft setting. And when you think about what he can be in the pro level, like, well, you don't want to pick a guy that high who doesn't have that sort of offensive upside, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's good when a player knows his own game, right? It's a weird thing to say, but it's often not considered until around NBA draft time when you think, okay, is this guy trying to do too much with what he's got? And typically those guys, kind of like a James Akinjo, who was Baylor's point guard this past season, it felt like there were times where he was trying to do just a little bit too much. He didn't understand his own limitations. He pushed that envelope a little too far, and typically it wouldn't pay off. It put you in a bad spot. Jeremy Sochan has the self-awareness, the game awareness too, to know where he fits into a game. And he's not the prima donna type where he's completely off from being malleable. This guy will mold into whatever you need him to be. And if you you ask him to put up 35 a night, you're probably the crazy guy, right? There's just no way he's going to do that. So instead, if you say, look, go out there, be a defensive minded, hard nosed basketball player who does the little things, the intangibles, and picks up the tough rebounds, picks up the big assists down the stretch, takes the occasional three ball, gets to the free throw line, and does okay. If you ask him to do that, which is what an NBA team should be requesting of a Jeremy Sochan, because those are his strong suits, he's going to be just fine. And he is so okay with not being the star every night, which is an issue for a lot of rookies.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. And I think if I want to do two more things here, one is I think he's a clever dribbler, even though he doesn't dribble that often. And two, I think his transition game is really good. Good
Yeah.
at filling the role and seeing the floor in those situations. Do you feel like we missed anything in terms of his big strengths or something that will make him a lottery level pick in this draft?
It's overlooked, I feel like, in a lot of facets for a lot of guys. It's personality. And you get this late in the game, they always talk about the interviews, right? You're interviewing with teams, you're working out with teams, and just as much of that is how well a guy fits in with an organization as it is his game. And I don't think there was a player on Baylor's roster this season that brought that level of personality and consistency like Jeremy Sochan. I switched it up too. He was a guy that every press conference, you knew exactly what you're going to get, win or lose. Had this big smile. He's got this Polish/English Oklahoma accent to him too. That's just so infectious. And he's always just got the biggest smile. The hair too, right? You see changed hair colors. One game it was pink. Another game it was blue and yellow for Ukraine. He's got a deeper level of thinking to him, and just this odd personality that fits in so well. Really anywhere, right? Because he's tough not to love. And I think that goes a long way too with a lot of coaches and GMs who want a player that doesn't shake things up in the locker room.
Hey guys, let's take one short little break here so I can talk to you about PrizePicks. Are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy, and it's super easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections in a given game. You can up to 10 times what you put in on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and you can use their award-winning app on the App Store and Google Play. They offer any prop you can think of: points scored, rebounds, even steals. They have mixed sport entries, so you could do like the NBA Finals with the MLB, for example. And they don't just have those two sports, NBA and MLB. They also got college sports, football and basketball, soccer, MMA, NFL, and more. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for our users. You can get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you got to use the code NBA. That's right, exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today at PrizePicks. Use the code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first entry scores a single point. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Let's flip to the not as fun side of the draft cycle. The weakness is part of guys' games, and a lot of people will talk about weaknesses in the context of growth points, improvement areas, stuff like that. You can make it sound as rosy as you want, but some guys stink at stuff. It's how it is. So Sohan's big one is obvious. You brought it up already. Can't shoot, doesn't shoot. And if he doesn't shoot in the pro level, that's fine. That's better than missing a lot. But like even the other stats that a lot of guys who kind of struggle from three are good at that make them project as good shooters, like free throws, not the best free throw shooter, right? Sub 60% this season, despite getting to the line fairly often, good at drawing contact. Nothing suggests as of now that Sochan will be a good three-point shooter in the NBA. And that is very limiting in terms of the ceiling you can have in the NBA level, especially in the modern game. And so if he is going to be that fourth option, like we've talked about, a guy who knows his role, knows he's not going to have the ball that much, not finishing a lot of plays, that's fine. But there's also a problem of if you can't shoot, you're kind of clogging up the paint or causing issues. And his three ball is a big weakness in his game that he'll definitely have to get a little better at the pro level.
Yeah, you can't be a 29% shooter and run the floor or run the 4 on the floor I guess you can, you don't want that. Is that the guy you want to draft with a top 15 pick? Usually no. And so you can you need to develop that a little bit more. And you saw Sochan this season, if you watch any of his tape, when he does take a 3 ball, he's really, really hesitant. Like he'll look and be like, all right, am I
He'll
open?
shot fake. He always shot fakes first.
He's wide open, and he's like, and then he'll take it and typically miss the shot. But every now and then he would can one. And again, I think it does improve. Is it what Jeremy Sochan's trying to improve this offseason to be a solid guy in the NBA? I don't believe so. And again, I don't think that's part of his game is him being a guy to look to score. When I think weaknesses for Sochan, the first is shooting and free throw percentage. You talked about it, sub 60%. Again, it's really tough to get away in the NBA being a 4 with a sub 60% free throw percentage. And again, now in a league that's progressively, arcing more toward the 3-pointer, you're going to have to be able to be generally competent at shooting from the outside to get solid minutes in today's NBA. And he just hasn't shown that yet. Both of those downsides are there. And Tony, I wish I could give you this whole, yes, Jeremy Sochan's going to work very hard and be a great 3-point shooter. But I would kind of be blowing a little bit of hot air. I just don't see that coming in his game, at least in the first couple of years he's in the NBA. It doesn't feel like he's that close to developing that part of his play.
Yeah, never say never with prospects. Like some guys just figure something out at some point. But yeah, I don't think it'll be ever really more than maybe at best like a slightly below average kind of thing for him, which is a problem and a concern. And definitely the reason, like I said earlier, if scouts thought he could hit like 36% at the pro level, he'd be going top 10, like
Right.
for sure, because his defense is that good. So that's the biggest limiting factor in his game. I mentioned this a little earlier. When he attacks the rim with the ball, it's really interesting because his first step doesn't do much.
Yeah.
His acceleration isn't that much. He's not like blowing by the guy. But if he already has that half step, he is fast enough that he can hold them off and finish. So like when he comes off a screen, which isn't that much, but when he does, he's able to get to a spot and finish or get a shot up or create something. But he's not just blowing by guys in isolation or anything like that. He'll never be a primary creator because of that. What do you think of his like attacking and speed and kind of the nerdy scout term that's used a lot is advantage creation, his ability to create a shot for a teammate and make an advantage? How do you view him in that area?
One of the guys that I just drool over in that category is Davion Mitchell from Baylor, 2021. Unbelievable off the dribble, unbelievable shot creator. You saw it in the national championship game against Gonzaga. He's kind of the premier of that guy that I've watched play basketball at the collegiate level. You go from him and compare that guy, right, who I have at the top, to Jeremy Sochan. There's a very, very large gap right there. And that's another thing that I usually put as a downside. When I've been asked in the past, where are the areas where Jeremy Sochan can improve? One of the big ones is the fact that he's just not that guy who's going to take a game over. To be able to put the ball in somebody's hands and say, all right, we are down 7 points with 3 minutes left in the game. You go be that guy. You really can't ask Jeremy Sochan to do that. His ball handling skills just aren't peak enough to be able to do it. And number two, and more importantly, his shot creation skills are not peak enough to be able to do that. And that's what you're seeing on the film too. That first dribble is a pretty darn slow dribble most of the time. His first move is a pretty typical first move most of the time. He's not showing you anything or any kind of vertical or lateral quickness off the dribble from behind the arc or in the wing where he's going to blow by a guy. It's just not there in his game. And that's what's going to hinder him from being late in the game, 3 or 4 minutes left, somebody's going to have the ball in crunch time and get hot. It's not going to be him. And again, his struggles to score from anywhere past 10 feet are a big reason why. You have to be able to score at 2-3 different levels to be that guy. And Sochan, A, can't do that. B, can't create his way to be that guy right now. That's a big downside to me. That's a huge downside to me. If I am taking a player, top 15, top 20, in a draft, he needs to be a guy with the capability to take over a basketball game at any level and help win the game down the stretch with the ball in his hands. Sochan's just not that guy right now, and maybe he becomes that. But again, I don't see that being him in the next 2 or 3 years, the I can take over a ball game at the NBA level kind of player.
I agree with that completely. And the 10 feet and outscoring thing is a big part of that, right? Like even just looking at the raw total numbers, 113 shot attempts from outside the paint the whole season. The whole season. That's like 4 a game, right? It's just not something.
Too,
yeah. Yeah, he played 30 games. Like, it's not something he'll be able to do at all. So his offensive package, like, he will have to be, when he's out there, and he is a good screener. I wish I included that
Oh
in the
yeah,
first segment here. So
yeah,
I think that can be what screen, short roll, make a
right.
disciple shot. Not a lot of dribbling, not any spacing, just like that kind of super, because his weaknesses are
Yeah.
both kind of hindering on that offensive end. Defensively, do you see any weaknesses there? I mean, he is one of the better defensive prospects.
Yeah, out of this class, Jeremy Sochan is really one of the top on the defensive side, and that's what has him so high on a lot of these draft boards. Is the fact that you're going to get a guy. I truly believe, I really do, that of offense and defense carries over in the NBA a lot faster, and that's been put on display with a lot of the Baylor guys who have come out recently. Because Scott Drew produces really tough physical guys. Davion Mitchell being one of those guys who have shown they can play solid defense in the NBA, and Sochan's a similar type. So I think when you look at the way he's going to be able to defend people at the NBA, guys at the NBA level, from a 1 to a 2 to a 3 to a 4, I think there are 3 to 4 spots that he can cover at any point in time on the court. I don't know if he has the size to go up against a bunch of these the really big bigs of the NBA. And granted, he can get there from a muscle standpoint, but I think 6'9" is kind of where he's going to cap out, and that's on the roster, so it's 6'8" in person. But defensively, he just showed a lot of really, it's one thing you really can't teach is a guy to go on the floor, get the basketball, or to be low and wide every defensive possession, or to lock in and determine that he will not let his man score at any point in time in the game. Jeremy Sochan has that. Maybe it's not elite athleticism, it's not elite quickness, it's not elite speed, but it's this innate ability to say, every possession, I am going to look you in the eyes and make sure you do not score. I will take the ball from you. I will shut you down. I'll go back in transition and I will dunk it. Jeremy Sochan has that. There are not a lot of basketball players with that. And it's the reason he is projected to be in the top 20 in this NBA draft, even without great scoring numbers. His defense, really tough to find a true downside, aside from the fact he's not the quickest dude in the world. I will give you that when it comes to downside. He could be both vertically, laterally, vertically, horizontally, lateral, any of those quicker.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, the defensive side, he'll always be solid to me. I think he'll be high. I would come higher than top 20. Like, I don't know if I've talked to anyone who has him outside the lottery. A couple people close, like back end, but he's a
Right.
pretty commonly projected top 14 guy because of the defense.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a lot of, and you're right. Like, it can be hard, especially if you're exhausted over the course of a whole game, to do all those little things, dive on the floor, get low, all that sort of stuff. So the defense will be solid there at the pro level, and I really believe in that. One more break here, guys, so I can tell you about BetOnline.net, your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's baseball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA to UFC to boxing. It's all there right on BetOnline.net. They're your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. If you head over to that website now at betonline.net, they've got NBA lines up for game 6 of the NBA Finals already. Celtics favored by 3.5 to 11 over under. You can get those lines at betonline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action over at betonline.net, because betonline is where the game starts. So
Yeah.
speaking of the NBA level, that is the crux of the draft. This
Yeah.
guy's game is not just going to be plug and play from the college level for anybody drafted or wherever they're from, overseas, whatever. They have to grow into the NBA game. Every rookie says the same thing at some point in the rookie year, whether it's 1 game, 10 games, halfway through the season. Oh my gosh, all the players are so big and so fast and so strong.
Yeah.
This is way harder. Oh my gosh. Their game has to translate. They have to figure out how to be good against that setting. And Sohan's game, I think, will translate so easily,
Yeah.
because I don't think he'll ever be a guy who has to grow into a role. I think you brought this up earlier, and I was glad you said it, because it was easy to put a pin in it and come back to it. Like, whatever role he's asked to do, I don't think there will ever be a situation where he needs the ball more, or even as a guy like putting his hands up to have the ball more. Like, he's just gonna run around and set his screens and play his defense and be that glue guy and be that role player that any team he'll be basically a plug and play kind of guy. So yes, he will struggle with faster players and stronger players and reading the game and all that, like everybody does. But once he gets up to NBA speed and stuff like that, I think his game will be one of the most seamless transitions of all these college guys into the NBA level.
You know, what two things really. The first being Davion Mitchell, who I've already brought up once, on that Baylor team in 2021. It was immediate. As soon as he got to the NBA for the Kings, it felt like he should be there. He belonged to the NBA, that he was right there in everybody. Damian Lillard, I remember he shut down Damian Lillard off the bat. And, Steph Curry, he's going toe-to-toe with these guys night in, night out, defensively shutting them down. He was ready for the NBA. Feels like Jeremy Sochan brings a lot of that same level-headedness, that same drive to the NBA and whichever team drafts him. So that's not going to be an issue for him. He's just got, again, it's that innate ability to do the little things defensively that make you elite, that he's going to bring the NBA level. And he's played night in, night out. The reason I think Davion Mitchell was so good at that is because he's playing a Big 12 schedule that featured guys like Cade Cunningham, who was the number one overall pick. And you played at a Baylor where you win the national championship and you're playing elite level basketball. Sohan's in a very similar boat. On the other side of that, look, Tony, I played intramural basketball this season. All right. I stand at about 6'4". I'm not very good at shooting. Like 6'4" is a post, right, in intramural basketball. But at the same time, here I am standing on the wing, like, throw me the ball. Just give me the ball. Just let me take a shot. Just please. It's intramural basketball, right? But that's every player, it seems like. Like, you, in some way or another, you want to score. That's the best feeling in basketball, is to put the ball in the bucket, and imagine doing that at the NBA level. I don't think that's what Jeremy Sochan dreams about every night. He dreams about blocking a guy, taking the basketball out of his hands, going on a one-man fast break and slamming it on the same guy. It's not about putting it in the bucket, shooting deep three-pointer. He was not the kid in the yard like the rest of us were, that were shooting them from half court just to see how long we can make them. He instead was doing the Mikan drill left and right. And it's behooved the hell out of his game. I can't say hell anymore. The hell out of his game. And he's been so crisp, because his focus is on whatever Scott Drew wants him to do. And he brings that to the NBA, which, again, not a lot of guys, myself included, could bring that.
100%. 100%. Even rookies sometimes are like, oh, man, like, I want to help. I want to score. I want to show what I can do.
Give me the ball, yeah.
And especially so sometimes in rookies' cases, because they don't play as much, right? They were like,
Right.
hey, I want to get my minutes and grow as a player. And like, that's all fine and good. You got to earn it. And I think that kind of guy who's willing to settle into a lesser role will earn it, quote unquote, faster. For the Pacers specifically, first of all, they have one forward currently employed. That's O'Shea Brissett. They have a bunch of centers and a bunch of guards and absolutely no forwards. So fantastic, seamless day one fit. I don't think he'd start, but I think he'd play in the rotation like immediately if he was picked by Indiana, which is really interesting. So before I talk about the fit, elephant in the room, they're not picking him 6. Like, that is just too high for this draft, for his projection, for his skill set. I do think with potential Brogdon trades, or if they trade Miles Turner, I don't think they will, but if they trade Miles Turner, or they find other ways to move stuff around and move up, if they can get another pick in the 12 to whatever, 15 or 10 to 15 range, yes, then he's a fantastic fit for their team needs, getting another defender on the court, and the transition game, the defense will fit how Rick Carlisle wants to play. Yeah, that's a pretty natural fit. I don't think it's a natural fit at 6, but the things he's good at, and given what the Pacers already had, Tyrese Halliburton, who wants the ball all the time. Baylor knows about Tyrese Halliburton from his college days at Iowa State. On the screener, they need defensive skills so bad. They have no one to defend at the forward spots. I do think it's a pretty good fit with the Pacers.
No, and that's something that I've had a couple conversations from, the Pacers to Houston, to these teams that are like, okay, you're in that range of, man, if we go after this guy, it feels like the entire league is going to look at us and say, oof, you could have gotten him at 9. You could have gotten him at 10. And I do believe that Sochan will be that guy. If you pick him at 6, you're thinking, geez, you probably could have traded that pick, gotten situated with the same dude a couple of picks later. That said, would I be completely shocked if he goes at 6? Yes, I really would. I think 6 is too high. But like you said, if by chance there's a trade in this realm where the Pacers are dropped back even to the 8 spot, I could see Sochan going there 8, 9, 10, all the way up through 12. He may still be available in the 12 spot. Although I'll say again, he's the type of guy when you get him in the gym to work out with an individual team, he'll be tough to say no to. Really easy to build a connection with quickly, even from a media standpoint. Like I said, he sits at the podium in these post-game press conferences, and you think, I want more of this guy. He was the stick him on a t-shirt and you'd sell 1 billion of them at Baylor this season because of his infectious personality and his ability to give you consistency in every facet of his game every single night that he goes out there. He's going to bring that to an organization, and that's tough to balk at even in the 8 to 10 to 12 range with a guy like Jeremy Sochan. So you're right. 6 feels a bit overkill. But if by chance a trade is put in and you go to the 8 to 12 spot for the Pacers, Jeremy Sochan to add just your second forward to the team should be there. And I'll add this in there too, Tony. Jeremy Sochan didn't start for Baylor. He was the 6th man for Baylor, a team knocked out before the Sweet 16, and is now a top 15 pick. Number one, it shows just how good Baylor really was last season. And on the back end of that, just how solid Jeremy Sochan is scoring off the court as he is with his play on the court.
I agree with a ton of that, and I think his range is sort of materializing as a guy who has all these, like you brought up, NBA skills on and off the floor. His popularity has maintained for a while, and look at who he's worked out for in the last couple weeks. He was supposed to work out with Indiana. I think he still will. Had travel issues. New Orleans done. He's with Sacramento like a couple hours before we talked. They picked 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's going to be picked 5, but teams in this high range are in fact interested in talking to him and seeing what he can be. So I think that all that stuff you just talked about, I think teams are seeing it and know about it. And I think there's a good chance he goes in the top 10. Will it be 6? I don't think so. But is it possible that the Pacers end up with him still, given a trade or given some moves? Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to talk about him with you. Drake, thank you very much for talking with me and sharing your expertise about Baylor men's basketball. Anything you want to add for Locked On Baylor listeners here today?
Look, that's Jeremy Sochan in a nutshell. Whoever gets him is in for a treat with this guy because he's not going to go away. You're not taking a big chance on a guy to grow into a role in the NBA. You're taking a kid who's got it between the ears and will make an impact day one with your team in practice, in front of the cameras, with fans. He will be the I don't want to say the lifeblood of the city, but just this lovable character that wherever he goes, everyone's going to fall in love with him immediately. And I'm telling you, let's say by chance the Kings don't pick him at 5. The Pacers get crazy and they say, 6th pick, Jeremy Sochan. I can guarantee you the Kings front office will be thinking, did we make a mistake? I really believe that because he could end up being tough to find a diamond in the rough in the first 10 picks. He could still be that guy, though.
I think the Kings think that about most of their decisions these days in the
Did
NBA.
we make a
Although
mistake?
Davion's one of their best picks they've made in a while, so I can't dump on them too much for that. Drake, thank you very much for talking with me. This has been a great time. Everybody listening on my end, you can follow Drake at Drake C. Toll and me at T East NBA if you're a Baylor listener wanting to hear more about the Indiana Pacers, especially will be important if Sochan does end up with the Pacers. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will see you on our next episodes.